Hi, I'm Sarah Gonzalez. Welcome to the news and why it matters. Glenn and Pat are out today, but we are once again joined by Jason Buttrell.
I would have you here even if they're not here, or even when they are here. So it's not just when they're not here.
I'll give you that brag.
Suck up. All right, Jason, what was the top story of the day for you?
I just sat through an excruciating, seemingly crazy long Sarah Huckabee Sanders White House press conference. I don't think a single reporter there asked about Russia and the expulsion of 60 diplomats. So I'm going to talk about it today.
Okay.
Lots of Stormy time, though.
Yeah.
That's all it was. Oh, my gosh.
Well, they like to focus on the important.
Yes, I thought so, too. I got to go Facebook. Not only the data, but just what's actually going on with that company right now. It's a big part of our economy, and it's very shaky at the moment.
Yeah.
It should have been the tax on our military bases and government offices, but for me, it's still the fallout for the stupid gun march or anti-gun march.
Yeah. Okay. So, Jason, you mentioned that they didn't touch on Russia at all. But the news now is that Trump has expelled all of those diplomats. What were there, 60?
60.
Yeah. But no one's talking about it.
And especially not in a White House press conference, which is, you think that's where the exact forum where they would ask about that, but nobody did. But up to 130 Russian diplomats or spies have been expelled all over the world by now. This is unprecedented. You always hear that, hey, we're at the point in time we haven't been this close to the war with Russia, Soviet Union since the Cold War. Well, now that's no longer a meme. That's actually pretty plausible. That's where we're at right now. The last time we expelled that many Russian diplomats wasn't Obama, even though Obama expelled, I think, around 35 or so. Last time you have to go to 1986 when Reagan did it. And that was at a very, very controversial time. That was right when he was still trying to negotiate, weapons drawdowns and stuff like that with Gorbachev. And that was our response. Gorbachev kicked out 5 American spies back in 86. And our response was to say, okay, yeah, we're kicking out 55 of yours. But we kicked out 60 spies and diplomats. Some of these it's interesting because some of them were not just diplomats, they were also undercover spies. Now, that's another interesting thing to this because there's kind of this unspoken of, unwritten upon agreement between foreign governments and ourselves. So basically, we know that you're spying on us. You have all these guys. We're keeping tabs on them. We're not going to pop them. We're not going to do persona non grata. We're going to let them be here as long as you let our guys do the same thing over in your country. Well, now we're saying, okay, screw that. We're publicly naming all these different guys. They have to get the heck out of the country. It's a pretty big development. But like I said, almost simultaneously, countries all over the world started doing the same thing. 14 other countries, I think, in Europe, including Ukraine, for crying out loud, also did the same thing. So this is getting pretty serious. We'll see where it goes from here.
So what led up to this, though? I mean, was there anything? Because it sounds like there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes.
So this is completely a response to, most specifically, the response to the chemical weapons attack in the UK. There's really no other way to describe this. It's gone beyond just an attempted assassination.
Are we linking it to it specifically?
Specifically.
Okay.
We straight up called them out and said this was what they did. So we haven't actually seen the actual evidence to this, which is one of the things that Russia's crying foul on. But this seems to be the consensus now.
And I read that Trump himself didn't confront Putin on this attack.
No.
So the general consensus is that it was them. But.
And it is an interesting part of this, I guess, that, because Trump has been so, outwardly lenient towards, to Russia this whole time through he's always been much more friendly to Putin than every other leader here. But can we stop and look at the fact that he just expelled 60 diplomats? This is a really big deal. I actually heard on CNN earlier today, and they were talking about, yes, he has, ejected 60 diplomats, but he hasn't even tweeted about it yet. And this is amazing. He tweets about everything. Why hasn't he tweeted about this? He needs to take it seriously. This is a good outcome for me, right? He's implementing a sensible policy, a policy that is consistent with American values, and he's not tweeting about it. It's like a win-win for me.
Yeah, completely. And another thing, when people say he hasn't been strong enough on Russia. Well, think about what he has done. And again, most people are not talking about this. This now makes the second. He also closed a consulate in Seattle. That was part of this whole deal.
Yeah.
This is the second consulate he's closed. He did one in San Francisco a while back. He did the Seattle one. Plus, he's also done a diplomatic annex, 2 diplomatic annexes on the East Coast. That's 4 facilities he's shut down since he's been president, plus 60 diplomats and spies. Obama wasn't this hardcore.
No, he wasn't. I one more media point on this too, which it's just so frustrating. And you're making much more important points than me. It's just you watch the media and you watch the way they react to it. Here is everyone now saying look, this is chemical weapons attack happened on UK soil. Do I believe that it was Russia? I absolutely do. Like I might be jumping to conclusions there, but that's what I believe. It's what all the intelligence is, has outlined for us. But can we remember that this same media was telling us that Bush was lying the entire time because the intelligence was telling us that they had chemical weapons? The same people who are now so willing to immediately accept the intelligence a few days after one of these attacks, the same people who were telling us that intelligence wasn't reliable and it was Bush lying the entire time just a few years ago. I think this is a rational response. I think it's the right response, but we don't want to get ahead of ourselves too much either. I mean, I don't want to start a war over this. It's a chemical attack. You can argue you should start a war over it, but we want to keep it as slow as we can and as measured as possible. And so far, he's done that, I think.
Are there any long-term repercussions to this, do you think?
Long-term, no. Russia follows a very strict reciprocity on these types of things. They always do a tit-for-tat type response. So what you're going to see is now that we've kind of out-busted that rule of not busting their spies, they're going to now eject some of our spies and some of our... So basically what we do is, and they've kept this standard ever since the Cold War, is let's say we have 1,000 U.S. diplomats that include, the undercover operatives, all in general about 1,000. Well, then Russia will also keep about 1,000. So if we dip below, and this is like a mathematical equation. If we dip below, let's say we go to 750, they will eject an equal amount, and they'll get to 750. We'll keep doing this until relations change, and they'll go right back up to 1,000 again. Yeah. That's the way it goes.
If we reduce their representatives and they reduce ours, you could say those two things are equal actions, right? Doesn't that mean that they're not getting punished for the chemical weapons attack? What's the punishment for them? If we're just dropping the same amount of representatives from either side, there's not a clear consequence to these actions. And I mean, again, it's a chemical weapons attack. If you want to back up and say, look, the bottom line is they were trying to kill one of their own guys, and something went wrong. Whoever was doing it did something wrong, and it wound up hitting 21 citizens of the UK. I'm assuming that's their calculus here. They're assuming that the target was not these innocent people walking around in the UK. But I'm just concerned that we're sending a message that you can get away with a lot and not pay a high price for it.
Yeah. No actual consequences. Okay, so Stu, all of this Facebook stuff, it just keeps getting worse, I feel.
Yeah.
What matters the most to you?
Let's start with the data. Okay. I'm going to be, I think, somewhat of a rarity here and be a mild Facebook defender on this.
Really?
Yes, and I know it's somewhat of a rare position these days, with the exception unless you're a Zuckerberg. If you're a Zuckerberg, you're still in that camp, I think. But Facebook asks you for a lot of data. And when they ask you for it, what you do is you say yes, okay? And you give them all that data. Then a third party comes in and says, hey, you want to link the app to Facebook? And they come in and they have an agreement with Facebook, and they have an agreement with you because when you decide to use this app, you have to once again approve that not just Facebook, but the third party can use your data. Now, if that third party, against the agreement that they have with Facebook, decides to give that to Cambridge Analytica or anybody else, is that really Facebook's fault? I think the answer to that probably is no. Now, they realized that this was happening and decided to tighten up their rules and have tightened it up years before this became a major controversy. Again, I think the most important part of this is not necessarily that Facebook is irresponsible with your data, is that we're irresponsible with our data. We just don't freaking care who the hell has it. If Cambridge Analytica had it, they had it for years, they were using it for God knows what, and while we didn't approve it, Facebook didn't approve it either. It's this third-party app that really screwed up this process here.
Do you think that it's not that we just don't care at all, but more so that no one has the time to go through all of these tiny terms and conditions and legal stuff?
I read the whole thing. I just keep scrolling 3-4 hours.
But it seems like they make it that way so that you don't go through and read it.
I think you're exactly right. Yeah, it's what's funny is South Park, the seer of all seers, actually called this multiple years ago, which they did this parody of, you didn't know you were signing your rights away to basically help you turn into a human centipede. But they were playing off that. They had no idea what was to come. This is basically what that is. No one scans through all of those different things.
What was that, 3 or 4 years ago? I remember that episode.
Terms,
what was the episode with that? Because South Park, I remember that episode, and it was, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago. at that time, when that came out, it was already a ridiculous joke that we're giving all the data. We all know we're giving them all that data. And that's a problem. We just don't care about it. And much worse things than this have already happened to us because of it.
Imagine this, though. Think about that. Would you ever give the government what you give private companies? Would you ever? So basically, what you're allowing Facebook to have is to take all of your information, everything, where you are every single moment of the day, which they track that everywhere you go. You ever pulled out your phone and said, "Wow, I was just in Sears and I got an ad for Sears"? It's because they're tracking every single moment, every single location you go to. Plus, Google, they track not everything they can access your microphone.
Oh
your
they
phone.
hear you talking and they show you
literally
ads.
Everything. So why, if we wouldn't give those things to the government, why are we just freely giving that up? Because what, we want to watch cat videos?
We want to share pictures of our
I'd rather give it to a company than the government, though.
Right.
I will say.
Right.
I will say. But you're right. I mean, we just don't care. We just don't care.
Doc, you said the fallout continues.
Yeah, Jesse Hughes from Eagles of Death Metal, you may recall his band was not involved, but attacked as part of the terrorist attack. One of the ones on Paris, where almost 100. Yeah, that was almost 100 people got killed.
Did, right?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Someone from his group actually died in that attack.
I think so.
I think his manager, I think the manager did. Yeah.
So he saw the March for Our Lives and went off on Instagram and posted this scathing, blasting the kids message about their involvement in this. And he was right about it. And he was even sensational and said, "You're using the blood of your classmates," really over the top, which normally I'd say, hey, back it off a little bit. But they've said things like that too. And he made a really good point. Took it a little harsh at the end and said, "I hope you live long enough to, suffer and see all of the guilt that comes with the paradigm."
Like, no, it's not. I mean, like, we all know, it should. You know what? The guy from Eagles of Death Metal has just as much a right as some 17-year-old that was in a classroom to be able to speak his mind. And you're right, he probably went a little bit over the top with some of the comments. But I mean, his points were generally right. They are being exploited. These kids are being exploited. Now, a lot of people are using this to kind of criticize them specifically, especially online. In reality, the parents here are allowing them to do this. They're allowing the media to use them to launder the left's views, and it's completely inappropriate.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we've got to take a break. Stay with us. All right, I'm not sure if you guys saw CNN's Brian Stetler. He was involved he spoke with Ben Shapiro. Ben kind of called him out on him not correcting David Hogg on his facts. And he actually admitted, Brian did in an interview, that he just let David tell lies he knew he was telling him and didn't fact check him. I think we have a really short clip if we could play that.
When I was interviewing David Hogg only 10 days after the massacre, there were a few times I wanted to jump in and say, let's correct that fact.
That's so interesting.
Let's make sure we're more. And at one of the times I did, and other times I did not.
Now, I do want to add, because that's not his whole explanation. He said there's always that balance, how many times you're going to interrupt.
I remember this interview, And I don't remember him interrupting and challenging on anything. Any interruption was like, "You're right, buddy, let's go get those guns." I mean, it was almost that attitude.
Well, and I mean, he literally says, at one of the times I did, and at other times I did not. But I needed balance.
It could,
so apparently balance
balance
is
between
one minor,
bananas and apples, right?
Right, yeah.
Exactly. What it is there. I mean, I don't think... There is a certain point, right, like where you can't just every you have to let someone get their sentence out. You can't. You don't want something that's so adversarial that you get nothing out of it. I understand.
You're assuming the interviewee is saying anything legitimate at all.
Yeah, no, I know.
Well, and can't you? And who says that you have to actually interrupt him to correct him? Can't you wait until he's done speaking and then gently?
You don't even have to correct. Could you just challenge them on anything?
Right.
Just like, wait a minute, what exactly do you want to do? And how come this? And you realize that stat. I mean,
and look, these kids, when it comes to arguing these points, are in a position of perfect defense. They could say everything, and no one can challenge them on anything. And it's not the way you come to a solution on policy. But of course, it's not the way you come to a solution on policy. You're talking to a high school student. Right. Of course, that's not when you're good at that. You come at that later in your age. And I think the thing that's really disturbing about the clip with Stelter is, when you have someone who is conservative and who is making points that are disputed points, or points that are maybe maybe taking a little bit of a liberty with opinion mixed in with fact, there's a constant call out from hosts at CNN and MSNBC. They're constantly interrupting. They're constantly stopping them. And I can understand there's a different standard for a 17-year-old 10 days after an attack. But, there has to be some pushback. You have to be able to clarify at some point that, the things that person is saying just isn't true. It's not helping.
I don't know.
The only one that comes to mind was the Bill Maher. And he made one point about the Second Amendment, right? That's the only real challenge I've seen.
Yeah.
Whenever I think of CNN, I think of politeness.
Oh, really? Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
And not only that, but they also have professional fact checkers that fact check everything that might have a conservative voice says.
Yeah.
Where's Media Matters been on any of these?
No.
Because if it was different, it was pro-Second Amendment, they would be writing articles instantly during the interview, and it'd come out even before they walked off stage.
Well, if they were partisan, they might lose their tax-exempt status, so I'm sure they're not going to be partisan.
All right, Jason, I want to get to the census.
Yeah, so, wow.
California's suing.
It's getting down to straight-up war between the Trump administration and the state of California. So the Department of Commerce just recently came out and said they're reintroducing the citizenship question, whether you're a citizen or not, into the what is it, the decennial or whatever they call it, census that's coming out in 2020. So California just lost it. They lost it. The the California State Attorney General said that this was illegal, although he didn't really back that claim up at all. And
wait, you know what else is illegal?
Illegals?
Being here in the country illegally
is also illegal.
Sorry, continue.
I think the argument was that you would put California in an unfair position because they have so many illegals, and you wouldn't be counting them the same way.
Interesting incentive created there, isn't it?
Yeah, so thanks for letting us all know the entire reason why you're getting in the immigration debate at all. And that's what it's all about. It's all about political power and posturing.
And also then dollars, because the amount of people you have get you more dollars for stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
I really wish I could make the point that I know Glenn is going to make on Thursday, because it's an insane point, but tune in on Thursday to check that out.
And by the way, this was part of the census since like the mid-1800s all the way up through like 1950 or something like that.
Yeah, it's interesting because to bring this back to the CNN conversation we were having, Sarah Huckabee Sanders came out and said in that press conference you were talking about earlier, Jason, that this has been part of the census every year since 1965, with the one exception of 2010. And immediately after the press conference, all the CNN anchors...
Stormy Daniels.
Stormy Daniels as well. But they came out immediately after. The CNN anchor and the guest said, by the way, we fact-checked this claim, and it is not true. It was not in the census all of these times. Now, the actual facts of the matter are there are two censuses. Is that the plural of census? That came out. Censi. I'm going to go with censi. It sounds cooler. And one out of every six that's sent out is longer. It's a longer form census, and in the long form census, everything that she said was right. In the 2000 census, long form census, it's in there. It's not in the shorter form census. But again, the most basic of statistics with one of the gun people, they will not fact check. And here is like you're deep diving in the different types of sensi, and somehow they're able to fact check.
In fact, liberal Jesus himself, Bill Clinton, had this in his census, and I think 2000.
In 2000, yeah.
And not only that, but he was also one of the main proponents for building a wall. And he actually built the wall on the California-Mexico border.
Okay.
But, facts.
Right, yeah, no, and Democrats can't be racist, so let's just move on. Okay, so give us the latest on Stormy Daniels.
So, yeah, we have a couple of interesting polls. First of all, yesterday, Donald Trump had the highest approval rating he had in, I think it was 6 or 7 months that came out. And then another poll came out today, and he had the lowest approval rating he's had in 6 or 7 months. Now, of course, when you look at the two polls, they're only 3 points apart. And really, so neither one of the headlines makes any difference, okay? They're both two polls within the margin of error of each other, but it becomes a big thing. Another thing that they've done is PPP polling, did a poll, and they troll when they poll. They poll troll.
Yes.
And they ask all these kind of funny questions and weird questions. And they asked this question, which was, who would win in an election between Donald Trump and Stormy Daniels? And shockingly, Donald Trump won 41-32. The current sitting president versus a porn star with no experience. He won 41-32. First of all, not a huge victory. You really should not drop by double digits
9 points.
I would think. But secondly is the funny part. They also asked who would win an election between Donald Trump and Stephanie Clifford. Now, Stephanie Clifford is the real name of Stormy Daniels. In that election, Stephanie Clifford won 42-41.
Oh wow.
So he actually lost to the porn star, but with the porn star with a classier name.
I stopped paying attention to polls ever since the Romney-Obama. Like, I remember Matt Drudge was saying, it's going to be a landslide. I remember actually charging in here, and the only person that said no was Stu was going,
No.
Because that is not a reason to stop listening to pollsters. It's a reason to stop listening to Drudge.
Yeah, no, I also want to bring up, she's going on tour, Stormy Daniels.
She's
Stephanie
on tour.
Clifford,
She's exactly. She's touring some strip clubs. It's Maha, Make America Horny Again. This is the name of the tour.
No.
Nice.
But she's not in it for the money, folks.
Oh, no.
She's not in it for the money. She's making money off it, but she's not in it for the money.
Yeah, because she told us.
They're just in it because she has been targeted by Trump, which, again, she could have just stayed quiet, taken the 130, and would not have been targeted by Trump.
The porn star wanted to do the morally sound thing.
And strip. I don't know if she's stripping for free there or what. I'm assuming she is.
Yeah.
Wait, before you go.
Okay.
We can all mock Stormy Daniels, and we've done it, and it's fun. But give me a percentage chance Stormy Daniels slept with Donald Trump. Doc.
Oh, 90-some percent.
90-something.
99.
100.
100. So let's, she may be nuts, but at least I think she's actually credible on this matter.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, we got to take a break. Stay with us.
But just the
Every day, we like to try to take your questions here on the show. So if you have a question to ask the guys, remember to tweet us using the hashtag #TheBlazeY. I would also like to point out that Doc Thompson is really creepy right now.
Right now?
Evergreen.
Okay.
All right. So Sumi wants to know, with banking institutions bailing on an industry, should we fast-track 3D printers and cryptocurrency?
Yes.
Fast track. What does that mean?
I don't know how that happens.
You can
Cryptocurrency, though. I mean, it would be something that if
3D print the guns as well.
Yeah, and of course, some of that technology you're not going to be able to stop whether you want to fast track it or not. You can get out of the way with regulations, though.
Yes. So individuals, yes,
well, okay.
but not as government.
And really quickly before we go, Sean wants to know, why were you wearing a suit? Who are you trying to impress? Yesterday, you wore a suit.
I wore a suit. I had a jacket. I just put a tie on.
I'm
trying to impress you.